So I'm Mihaly from Weviz, and today we're gonna take a quick look at our old and new features. So we are just going to launch the software, wait for it to load up, and we're gonna drop a model and take it for a spin. So here we are at our early access welcome screen. Here you can see my already ongoing projects, and here you can open already existing projects down here at the plus button. Up here I have my profile. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in detail. But for now we're just going to click new project, and this will allow us to import new file. To see compatible formats, you can just click here, and you also have a link to some of our tutorials that allow you to optimize your files for better functioning with Weviz. Okay, so Rafael here is asking if he can import models from Rhino. To which the answer is yes, you can. Rhino exports several formats that we support. Okay, this time I'm just gonna work with a simple FBX file. So we are going to double click it to load it. As you can see now, it's processing the object, and it's going to write how many triangles it took to open up the object. Okay, next we are going to look at the orientation of the object. It can be modified by the arrows, and at this point it's also good to take a look at our model if everything looks right or not, because some of the normals might be inversed. So if you think anything is wrong with the display of your file, you can click this button up here. Let's increase the interface size a little bit, and this will double all your normals, which can avoid some display problems. As you can see, the funnel here up top is going to change its appearance. So this is a sign that it might have had any display issues if it was not for me clicking this button. Okay. Once we fix the orientation of our object, we go to the next step, which is scaling the object. So you just click your unit up top here, and this will put the object to your scale. And here you have reference objects. These allow you to kind of intuitively understand the size of it. But you also have, of course, the units on the sides. Okay, so once we are happy with the orientation and the scale, we go into the editor. All right, so here we are in the editor. So you have a couple of buttons here, and I'm gonna say a quick word about all of them. So here is basically just the main menu: home, full screen, opening project, just basic, option stuff. Okay, then the principal areas of Weviz are down here at the bottom. The first one is material editor. This will allow you to edit materials, put some stickers on. We'll look at this more in detail later on. Second screen is to set up an environment. We will talk about more in detail about this one too. Third one is for options of your camera, such as focal length, depth of field, post-processing, etc. Now here comes the exciting part. This one is the slides, annotations, and titles sections. This one also features measurements. And then here we pass on VR, which is the final step, usually. Yeah, sure. So Edward has a question about Inventor, and I confidently can reply that Inventor exports many formats that we do actually support for importing. So yeah, no problem for working with Inventor. You can look into specific export formats from Inventor and import formats in Weviz. Okay, so I'm going to deactivate this menu now, and I'll show you the hierarchy. Hierarchy can be activated in most of these menus. And this one, of course, will allow you to select individual components and also manipulate them. So basically move them around, scale them, put them into containers, or even group them and add constraints. Constraints will allow to put behaviors on your parts. So basically you could open a door or rotate a wheel or slide something on a rail. I'll show you this more in detail later on. Also, by creating containers, you can create groups of objects or objects that can be movable in VR separately. All right, so first of all, we're gonna start off with a bit of material editing. So I'm just gonna have my object here. As you can see, the rendering is very high quality. I mean, I hope it comes through with my internet connection and streaming speed. Okay. Nicolas has the question of, can you import different objects with different formats on a scene? Yes, you can, absolutely, no problem with that. I'll show you an example later on. Okay, so we're gonna drop a couple of materials from our material library here. So we have a selection of metas. We have a basic library, but you can also create materials from scratch, basically using any image or just configuration sliders that we have in the software. But for now, we're just gonna use our own library. We also have a large material library on our website that you can use. So yes. All right. So first, to apply materials to your model, it's really easy. You just basically drag and drop, and this will apply materials to the materials group that have been defined in your CAD software. So just gonna drop a couple of materials to make this model look nice and show you what else you can do in the material menu. So let's drop a couple of these. Okay. Okay, so when you are in the material editor, you can right click on your material groups, and all these actions you have here, you can copy color, edit material that is already on the model. So basically modify color, brightness, degree of reflection. You could also apply a reflection map or modify the already existing one and create a bump map. When you use this method, so basically right click edit on your model or double clicking while you are in the active material editor, you can see it down here. This will edit your material on the model. All right, so here we have our object. Let's modify that material a little bit too. I find it a little too shiny, so I'm just going to increase roughness. but I still want to keep the reflection, so I'm gonna increase the reflection too a little bit. All right. Okay. So here also in the material editor, so we can use right click to do a couple of actions. Editing is just editing the applied material as I've just done. We can hide here. Now when we use the hide option in the material editor, it's going to hide all the instances, all the parts that that material has been applied to. So we can just right click and show all to get back everything. And then we have isolate, and this will isolate the group of that material. Look at it, just going to center the group of material into the viewport. So if you would like to hide the interface, you can use Tab on your keyboard, and this will give you a beautiful full screen view of your object. Okay, so we can also copy the color or just basically drag and drop this material or any material applied into the library so we can use it later. Okay, so we're just gonna do a quick save just to prevent any further hiccups. And I suggest, this might be generally a good practice while using anything in early access is to save frequently in case of anything happening. All right. So what happens if you would like to apply a material to a specific part, but it's already part of a group, but you don't want to change, let's say, for example, the rubber duck. You'd like to change the material of the duck, but not all of them, only a single one. Well, there is an easy way to do this. We have this button up here, and this will allow you to apply materials to individual objects. So let's just select the duck here. Okay. And apply something else on it. Yeah. It's gonna be a blue duck. All right. And now this one, it has its own material group. Okay, so in the material editor, we also have a selection of stickers, which can be PNG images that you download from the internet, but we also have a basic library included into in the software. So basically you can just drop a sticker, scale it, and lock it so it doesn't slide around. All right, so I think this one looks pretty nice. Let's see what else we can do with it. In addition to applying materials, of course, you can select the components that are in here by basically by their parts, by their geometry. So these are the parts that have been defined as separate parts in your CAD software. So basically the same principles apply here. I can even close the material editor here, and I can right click, focus, hide, isolate, but this time it is isolated by basically the part in the 3D file instead of the material group. You can also delete and copy pivot points or just manually reassign pivot points. So the pivot points you are seeing here are the ones that have been defined in the CAD software. Now, sometimes they are not the ones we would like to work with. You'll see later on when we take a look at constraints why this is really useful. So let's say I would like to rotate this part slightly. but the pivot point is far out here. So basically, if I rotate it, it would just look like this. So what I'm going to do instead is just right click and click move pivot. I'm just gonna click here, and now the pivot is much easier to manipulate and at a much more convenient place. All right. So what else can we do here? Well, we can basically create child containers in the hierarchy. So that would look like this. For example, I'm going to select a component, for example, this component here, and assign a slide constraint to it. So I'm just going to click the part I would like to select, right click it, and select move to new container. Once this is in the new container, you can see that the name tag has changed now, and it has this rounded corner box. Okay, so I'm gonna place it up top here so we can find it easily. And I'm going to isolate it just to make sure it includes all the parts I wanted to have in it. So as you can see, it doesn't include all of the parts. I would also like to have these parts inside. So in that case, it's really easy. I'm just gonna click it and slide it on the container, and it's gonna drop right into it. So now when I hide it, I can see that those components are also inside this container. But there are other ways to do this. Let's say I want to select something that is really complex and in the middle of everything. So what I can do is just hold down Control on my keyboard, and this will allow me to select multiple components of the files that I could later drag into a container, or just right click and move it into a new container. But what holding down Control also allows us, once the hierarchy is open, you hold down your Control key and you can use this rectangle to select everything that is basically drawn inside this rectangle. So once you have this, we're gonna do a little trick and we're gonna hide these parts. And this will allow you to make really, really precise selections, because anything that has been hidden once is not going to be selected by this rectangle after that. So let's hide everything I don't want in my selection. And now we have it much easier. Let's hide the duck beak. Just right click and hide, or you also have these little eyes next to the names of the parts. And last but not least, I'm going to hide these ones. Hide. Okay. So now I have my part, and everything is in there. Or is everything in there? No. You can see that there are these parts, and maybe even this. Yeah. So these three parts remain outside. So I'm just going to multi-select them and drag them inside this container. And there you have it. So now I just click show all, and we have our group. Now, once we have this, we can grab it in VR. And since it's dependent of this parent here, once we grab it in VR and put it back, it's gonna snap back right to its place. But what if we would like to apply a constraint to it in a way that it would just slide up and down? Since I have this container, now I can come up here, and as you can see, we have two small icons here. This one is for rotating constraints, and this one is for sliding ones. So I'm just gonna drag this, and once I drag it, this small blue dot appears right next to the container on the left side. So I'm just gonna drop it here, and at this point it's really easy, because we just have to define the direction of the sliding that we want to occur. So we can see that this is 90 degrees rotate it. So we don't want to slide it in this direction, which is the direction of the blue line. So what I'm going to do is hold down Shift key. And once I'm holding Shift, I can rotate by steps of 10 degrees. So without Shift, this would be just regular rotation. But if I hold down Shift, it's going to be by steps of 10 degrees. So it's very easy. Just hold down Shift, drag, and you can make a perfect 90-degree rotation. Okay, then you click Next, and you have to define the minimum, minimal, and maximal position of the slide. So I'm gonna push it up here till about the part it hits the top, and then just pull it down a little bit. Voila, exactly here, and hit save. Okay, so now you can see that my constraint is assigned. You have the small icon here. Okay, once this is done, you can basically just take your mouse and grab this and drag it around. And this works in VR too. So once you have the constraint, you just step next and you go to VR, step next to your object, reach out with the controller, grab the part with the trigger, and you can pull it. Let's take a look at the rotation constraint. Same concept, slightly different behavior. We are going to select this door, convert it to a child, move to new container and convert to child. If it's a single part, you can also just use convert to child. I'm gonna drop it up there once more to make sure it's at the right place. And I'm going to drop a constraint on it. All right, so this one can be tricky if the CAD file doesn't have the right pivot point. We can try to use this button here, which is really clever. It will take the pivot point of any existing part that is on the model. But sometimes we just can't find the right one. So in this case, we still have the opportunity to basically just manually assign the pivot point. So basically move it around till we find the right point of rotation. So this can be tricky, so you always have to take a look at from multiple camera angles to make sure that this is at the right place. And there you have it. Now I'm happy with my pivot point, so I'm just gonna click Next. And the same goes here. We have to define minimum rotation. Now I will just leave the door closed, so that's the minimum rotation, and I click Next here. And from that point, I'm gonna grab this arc on the gizmo, this arch, and just open the door here. And click Save. And there you have it. We already have a rotating gizmo in here. All right, excellent. So this is a couple of things you can do with the constraint system. In the hierarchy, you can also use the right-click option to import new objects that are not in the scene yet. So basically you just click Add New Object and you select a file and import it into your scene. Okay, so we took a quick look at most of these things. We're gonna come back to the hierarchy when we look at the slides later on, because with the combination of these two tools, you can do very interesting things. Once you edited your materials, you can jump into the environment editor, and up here you select environments, and here you are going to have your categories, and basically you can just choose an HDR image that are widely easily available on the internet. So we have our own default library, of course. Okay, great, thank you everyone. All right, so once you load up your HDR image, you have sliders to modify the image the horizon, the size of the image itself, the sphere, and the rotation, of course. Now, here we have settings about the HDR image, but since we are since the HDR affects the lighting of the object, this will also influence the appearance of the object, especially with ray tracing on. So I'm just gonna bump up the brightness a bit, maybe bring a little more color, too much, but I still find my object is a little dark, so I'm just gonna increase model lighting. And there we have it. Okay. So basically these are just very basic sliders that modify the appearance of your image, just like in any other photo editing software. And this will greatly impact the look of your object. We can also question from Elizabeth. Is it possible to apply two constraints on the same container? I haven't attempted it yet because I think it's not possible in our current version. So if it's the same selection of objects, then I'm pretty sure you have to choose if you want to use a slide constraint or a rotation constraint. So the answer is no for now to that, but with the addition of slides, we will see that there are other ways to put movement onto our object, and this could be often a workaround to this kind of issues when we want something to have a more complex type of movement. I guess it's also the right time to mention that we also support a number of animated formats. So it could be a file that has motion study from SolidWorks, for example, or an animated FBX. The animations can be viewed inside Weviz. Yes, so for Edward, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a built-in library, and you can also download a bunch of HDRs from the internet. But we do have the ones that are in the default library. Well, first of all, you're gonna see them when you open your software, your version. They are marked with this little bar, and then when you modify them, they are going to be saved in separate instances. So you can even create your own values, and save it as kind of a preset for your future projects. All right. Okay. What is also nice is we can also just use okay. We can also apply sunlight. We can apply sunlight. Well, this is gonna use the ray tracing and basically add a type of light that would be most precisely described as sunlight, and you can modify its power, elevation. Of course, this makes more sense on outdoor scenes, but it can be a large help with the lighting. So okay. So basically now I'm just gonna show it in the same environment. So I can increase the power of the light, the elevation of the sun, and I can also modify its position, right? So this can greatly increase it can greatly change the appearance of our object. So we can do a lot with appearance using these sliders, and I'll show you a little bit later on that we also have up here we also have 3D lights that you can drop into your scene. We're gonna talk about these a little bit later. All right. So I'm just gonna delete that light for now. Okay, so let's take a quick look at camera settings, and just gonna show how it works real quick. So here you click the bottom camera menu, and this will open up the camera settings. Here you can modify the field of view of your camera. You can also add depth of field. So basically you can just hit a focus point on your object and then even define the degree of background blur you would like to have. And then here you have the post-processing tools. So post-process will apply to the entirety of your scene. So it will take your scene as if it was an image and modify all the values on it, including your object. Saturation, contrast, and brightness. So these are, the usual sliders. You can also modify white balance, add vignetting, chromatic aberrations, bloom, etc. So that's just a quick mention on this. You can also just take snapshots here that are going to be saved into your library. And if you check this check mark here, you can take basically a PNG image with transparent background of your object. So if you would like to reuse it later in other softwares, you wouldn't have to cut it out manually. It would be already a cutout. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what we call props and mannequins, and that's where we have the lights too. So first of all, we have our humanoid mannequins, basically 3D models of people that we can drop into the scene with an easy drag and drop. Drag them around, rotate, and there you have it. This can give you a sense of scale of the object without having to go into VR, and it can also help show off your object for other people. Yes, so answering to Nicholas, yeah, the camera settings are fairly straightforward. So basically you just have a simple field of view slider. Depth of field, you can turn it on, and then basically you just pinpoint your focus point. So the main idea, one of our principal ideas, is that the software is very intuitive to use. So basically it should be just you can start using the software basically after a short tutorial, or you even just by figuring it out yourself for many things that you want to do inside. Basically you can play around with it and you will find that most of the things is very easy and intuitive. But we also have a bunch of tutorials, and more are on the way that will show you how to use it. And anytime you have doubts, you can. We have a forum where you can ask any questions, or you can also just send us an email or anything like that. All right. Okay. So back to the models. So we have these high quality models that you can just drop into the scene. I'm just gonna remove depth of field for now and increase the brightness a little bit on this one. On post-processing, yes, I'm gonna increase the brightness a bit. And some of our models are animated. One. Also, for other props, basically, you can go in here in the environment editor, and you have the 3D lights we already talked about. So this again can be can make all the difference when you are realizing when you are making your captures, or you just want to pinpoint or highlight something. You can just drop a light and even just get more light into dark places. So once you drop your light, you can double click it and modify its intensity or the attenuation, basically the spreading of light over the space. And also, of course, just use a simple color picker to modify the color. Okay. Now, what we do with the lights is we oftentimes don't want these large lights to be actually present in the scene. I mean, we do want the lights, but not the lamps themselves. So unless you state explicitly you would like to see your light, the lamp, it's going to be hidden, and you are only going to have the light that remains here. But if you would like to actually have the lamp in the scene, you can always just check this check mark here, and this will, which says show 3D object, and this will ensure that the light stays, the lamp stays there. So it's even the light itself is, the lamp itself has its geometry visible in the scene. So we have a couple type of different lights. So we can just drop them around. I'll keep in mind, of course, that it doesn't hurt to have a strong GPU for this part, especially if you would like to do it with ray tracing. But even without ray tracing, as you can see, the lights work very, very good. All right. Basically, you drop the lamp, the light, and you can double click it and really just modify that intensity. This one, the spotlight, you can also modify the angle of the shutters and also change the color, yeah, as I mentioned. So yeah, as answering to Edward, yeah, the intensity is up to you. You define the intensity of what you would like to have. Okay, so what else do we have? So we talked about the mannequins, we talked about the lights, and now we are going to talk about the floors. So these will add different floors to your scene. So these floors are more than just simple materials. They have their own geometry. So as you can see, it's not just something flat. Well, this one would look better on something on an outdoors environment. So, but basically, yeah, you have pebble, stone, sand, different types of sand and dirt. You have water, and and an ocean, for example, to if you would like to showcase something like a boat or a ship. All right. And also in the props category, we also have other objects. Of course, rocks are not the best match for these type of objects. But if you would like to show off, let's say, a bike or something like a moto, this could be nice with an outdoor setup. Basically, drop a couple of props in there. All right, so that's props, floors, and lights. So let's take a look at slides, annotations, and titles, and also measurements. So the slide system is quite a robust system on its own. So this will allow you to basically capture the states of the scene, including the environment, geometry, and material configurations. So depending on the version you are running, you might have a slides button down here, but I'm working with a slightly different version. So I'm to have this, the slide system, I'm going to click on the review mode, and here is where we will have titles, annotations, measurements, hiding parts, and the creation of slides. So once I'd like to create a new slide, I click the plus button and set up my scene as I like it. Click here and validate the slide. So after you click plus, you compose your scene and you validate it with this check mark, or just simply cancel it with the X button. Okay, once this one is done, we can do a multitude of things. Basically, we can modify anything, be it material configuration, application of stickers, it could be the application of models, environment, camera angle movements, or hierarchy modifications. So you'll see that why that one is particularly interesting. So let's set up a couple of slides. Okay, so the first one I captured, I'm just gonna click it to get back to that point again. I'm gonna click the plus button now and create a modification on my environment. So basically I'm just gonna modify some materials. So I'm just gonna take the blue duck. So here I come back into material editor, select the material up here, and just grab this sphere and drop it on the rest of the ducks. So now we are making blue ducks. Go back to the slide selection and validate the scene. So once this one is done, as I can see between the two slides, okay, so there's a little bit of issue with the light here. Okay. Now let's look at the commenters and title systems. So once we are creating a new slide, we can click here and just select a title text we would like to apply. I like this one with transparent background. Up. I'm just gonna type that factory in here and put it up here. Okay. Now when we call that slide back, we have the title that is written on it. What else can we do? We create a next slide and we can leave comments with our profiles that we saw earlier. So basically, I'm gonna leave a comment here and say use a different method. So now when you call this slide back, you're going to have my comment there, which is tied to a specific part. Anyone else who has the file or that participates in an online session is going to be able to comment on this annotation with their own name and profile picture. Something like this. Okay. And we can also add measurements in the same spirit. So basically, we are going to create a new slide, zoom in here, and create a measurement of this meta part here. All right, and validate. With the slides, we also have a selection of options on the right-click menu. So let's say I would like to keep the same camera angle for the measurement that I have on this one, on this slide here. So I'm just going to right-click this particular slide, select copy, and I'm gonna click camera view. And I'm just gonna click on the next slide and click paste camera view, which will appear right after the copy button. And once that is done, I validate it. So now the only thing that changes is the annotation goes to measurement, but we keep the same camera angle. We can also duplicate, delete, and delete slides, modify their sizes, or modify the amount of time passing between two slides. So if I slide this slider up really high, the movement is going to be slow. But if I bring it all the way down, it's going to be a rapid movement. I like to leave it somewhere in between. So what is pretty nice about this is you will get a smooth, gradual transition between two different slides. Now, where it really becomes interesting is going to be with the use of hierarchy, for example. So I'm going to create a new slide here and move some components around. I'm also going to use the rectangle selection that I did earlier. So holding down the Control key. And move some parts around. All right, I validate the slide. I'm gonna copy again the camera view and paste it onto this one. And this will create basically an exploded view of my object. So I'm gonna create another slide where this is a bit more visible. So here you go. That's a quickly improvised exploded view. Of course, with more configuration, you can get much more about it. All right, so that was a quick look, quickly at about everything. So next thing you could do here is pass into VR. So I'm going to show you a couple of video examples of that. Basically, once you are in VR, you can use your controller to teleport around and use a camera to take pictures and a measuring tool to take measurements, as you would in the real world. If it's a multi-user session, an online multi-user session, you are going to be able to Okay, so answering to Edward, as I was saying, the multi-user session will allow you to enter to collaborate with your coworkers, or maybe even take a look on your object with your client, and this would allow you to work in the editor at the same time, but also, as I'm going to show it, go into VR. Well, this here now is the this one here is a demonstration of a multi-user session. So what happens here is you go into the settings screen and you click create network session. And once this one is done, you give the session ID and the session password to the person or people you would like to invite into the session. And then they will appear in the session. You will see their profile pictures, as you can see in the upper right corner. Here, the profile picture of the people who are joined. And if somebody goes into VR and the other person is in the editor, you could simply just see the person here while you are in your editor, and you can see them move around the scene. But you can also, of course, just simply join them in VR. Also, the slides and annotations are going to appear in VR. So inside, once you created your slides, you can call them from your VR console. So as you can see here, I'm with my colleague Etienne, and we are looking at the parts. We are moving around the object, we are checking some parts. I can open the door. So it becomes really interesting when there are a large number of people around the same object and they can discuss it and take a look and take measurements. And so the final state would be to save your project. So you can just click here or just hit Ctrl S or save as, and you can just hit save here. So hopefully this gives you a general understanding of the things you can do in here. Now, this was kind of a quick visit, and with the use of the slides tool and all the props and lighting instruments we showcased today, you can do quite a lot. This was a bit of an improvised scene, but if you make something nice, don't hesitate to post it into our forums. And if you would like to check out some stuff for inspiration, you will see quite some good, nice things that have been created that are going to be in the forum.